highest being. Rise to your 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 highest being.
There are two kinds of lions, African and Asiatic. The African lion is larger than the Asiatic lion, about 100 pounds. So where the African lion can reach a weight of about 500 pounds, the Asiatic only grows to about 400 pounds. Of course, if you're being attacked by either one, I guess that difference doesn't make. While the African lion is plentiful living in various sections of Africa, the Asiatic lion is an endangered species. There are only 650 left on the planet. And they all live in the national park in India called the Gir National Park. Because there are so few of them, the rangers in the national park are very protective of the Asiatic lions. Now, the reason I brought all this up is because I recently viewed a video on YouTube about an encounter with an Asiatic lion and a national park ranger. Now, there are tons of videos on YouTube showing encounters between animals and humans. But I chose to talk about this one because of how it struck me and the lesson I found in it. So the story goes like this. One day, one of the rangers was watching the adolescent lions playing with each other, and he always enjoyed watching the adolescents because they were like big baby kittens. Then he saw that they were moving toward the edge of a cliff. And since the season had been so hot and dry, the floor of the cliff would often crack and split off, and the pieces would fall to the ground far below. So it concerned him. The young lions were so close to the crumbling edge that he felt they were in danger. The older male of the tribe, also got concerned, and he roared at the young lions to move away from the edge. They ignored him, as adolescents do. So he got up and he approached them while growling his disapproval. The young lions finally paid attention and they moved off from the edge of the cliff. But by then, he was already near the edge of the cliff, and he was much heavier than they were. So suddenly the ground that he was standing on began to crumble and split open, and it fell off the edge, and he went with it. He went falling down the side of the cliff, and he desperately reached out and grabbed the edge of the cliff with his claws. Then he tried to pull himself back up, but the ground and the rocks were cascading over the edge of the cliff, and the ground he was struggling to climb up seemed to be crumbling beneath him. So the ranger who was watching immediately called on his colleagues. He sent out a radio call of emergency, and he grabbed a heavy rope and began to uncoil it, hoping to wrap up the lion in his rope and help pull him up. By the time he got his rope uncoiled, the others had showed up, and they too grabbed their ropes. And within a few minutes, they all had ropes wrapped around the lion who was hanging off the side of the cliffs. And they were able to pull him up off the side of the cliff. Since the lion was grown and so heavy, it took all of their strength to pull him up. And by the time they were able to pull him up, they were exhausted, and so was the lion. So the lion was totally depleted of energy and just laid out on the ground. But the ranger knew he had to untangle the lion from the ropes in order for him to go on with his life. But they didn't want to tranquilize him because he was so depleted of energy. So the ranger tribe decided to communicate with the traumatized lion. And he went and he stared at him. He looked deep in his eyes, and they commiserated visually for several minutes. And then he approached the lion to untangle the ropes. His colleagues were amazed because the lion did not flinch. According to, apparently the connection that he had made with the lion was such that the lion trusted him and knew that he was in no danger from him and allowed him to remove the ropes. And after the ropes were removed, the lion got up and he left. But there's more. 2 months later, the monsoons came. The rain immediately fed the water-starved earth and all the plants that were drying out. But then when they got their fill, the rains kept coming. And now instead of them being quenched, they were being over-soaked. And then the over-soaked ground began to build mud mountains, mud, deep mud. And they began having mudslides down the sides of the hills. So the ranger was out inspecting the grounds and inspecting condition of the grounds that they felt were at risk to protect the animals. And as he was doing an inspection, he got to a part where he saw a fallen tree, a big fallen tree. It was a tree in which a lot of little animals lived, and so he was concerned, and he went up to the tree to inspect it. And while he was inspecting the tree, he suddenly heard a roar behind him, and when he turned around, a mudslide was rushing toward him so fast that he couldn't get out of the way. So he grabbed hold of the tree for some security as the mudslide rushed over him, washing away his Jeep. He found himself buried in the mud. Fortunately, an air hole popped open right above his face. So he could breathe, and he could see the sky above him. But he was concerned because when the mud dried, it would crush him. But then as he was beginning to fade out of consciousness, he thought he saw a tan fur, glimpse of tan fur, going past the hole. And even though his ears were plugged, he thought he heard a roar, and then he passed out. When he awakened, he felt that the mud was being moved off of him, and he began to hear voices. And he looked up, and there were his colleagues digging him out of the mud. He was amazed because how did they find him? He was totally covered in mud, and there was nothing to indicate where he was. But when they finally pulled him out of the mud, he looked over, and there 50 feet away was a muddy lion sitting there staring to make sure he was okay. And when he was okay, the lion left. So they took him to the clinic, and he got treatment, and he wasn't really hurt that much. He only had small cuts. So after a few days, he was able to get up and walk. They had ordered him to stay off for 2 weeks, but he had a few days before he could go back. But he missed the forest. He missed the park. He really liked being there. So he took a drive over to the entrance of the park. And when he got to the entrance of the park, he noticed off a few hundred feet, the lion was laying down near the road watching the gate. And when the lion saw him, the lion got up and walked toward him as he moved toward the lion. And when they got close enough, they just stood there and they stared at each other and shared something between them. Something. And then they both nodded their heads and the lion walked away. The reason I wanted to talk about that particular incident, that particular encounter, was that The line indicated something that we historically do not give animals credit for. You know, we always say that these are dumb animals, and they only operate on instinct. But this lion demonstrated a consciousness far above the historical view that humans have of dumb beasts, if you want to call them that. He was operating on much more than mere instinct. He demonstrated an understanding of friendly intent. He demonstrated gratitude. He showed an awareness of connection and mutual protection. And he returned the kindness that had been shown to him. He demonstrated a desire for friendship and bonding. We believe in infinite intelligence. We believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. Science is now in the process of discovering that the basic source of everything is consciousness. The basic source of everything is consciousness. Consciousness produces energy. Energy produces plasma. Plasma is an electrically charged atomic substance that comprises 99.9% of the universe. It is invisible to our eyes, but it is active and it is creative. Lightning is made of plasma. The stars are made of plasma. Space is not an empty vacuum. It is filled with plasma. It seems that plasma is continually creating the dust that fills the universe. And these dust particles are attracted to each other and they form clouds. So all the clouds in the universe are being formed as a result of the activity of plasma. And now upon examination, scientists are learning that these dust particles coagulate. They coagulate in the shape of double helixes. The same shape as our DNA. Plasma, when it is captured in a container, acts as if it is alive. Life fills the universe through plasma. So plasma is alive. That means that the universe is alive. That means that consciousness, which creates plasma from itself, is the universal mind that guides us all. Everything in the universe is created from consciousness. The animals are conscious and they are more intelligent than we give them credit for being. The plants are conscious. And they communicate with each other using their own language and they are aware of the world around them. Some people are naturally aware of the consciousness of plants. They may not know the language of plants, but they are drawn to them. They can't help wanting to touch them and be around them and care for them. There is something in their consciousness that connects with the plants. And when they get together with the plants, magic happens. We call it the green thumb. My wife Sandy is one of those people. She has a very special relationship with birds and flowers. She can't pass by a flower garden or even a pot of flowers without acknowledging them and wanting to take a picture. She greets the flowers on our porch every morning and is always pruning them and pulling off dead leaves. It's a truly meditative experience for her, and it always seems to energize her. I can remember a time when I had plants all over my bedroom and my office. They seemed to caress me with their consciousness, with their energy. I always felt comforted in their presence. On the other hand, scientific tests have shown that when plants are in the presence of someone who has done harm to them or doesn't like them, they go on alert and the stress level of the plants rises dramatically. And as long as that person is in the vicinity, the plants are in stress. Maybe that's why some people have plants that always die. Knowing that plants have consciousness Is it so far-fetched to think the trees may have wisdom as they seem to have in the movie fantasies? Is it so far-fetched to hug a tree and feel something? Remember how the trees chose to participate in the war to save their world in the Lord of the Rings movies? The pews in which you are sitting came from trees. And even though they've been cut away and carved, they still have consciousness. Remember, everything comes from consciousness. We now have AI, artificial intelligence. But even before AI, our technological gadgets had a consciousness. I can remember when I supervised a group of engineers who maintained the desktop computers in the department that I supervised at the City and County of San Francisco. Several hundred computers. But there was one woman who had a very negative energy. And every 6 months or so, we had to replace her computer. Because it would crash. It would crash from the stress of her using it. Ironically, if we let the computer sit unattended for a couple of months, it would wake up and start to work again. Just like a person who had to go on vacation to recoup. Now I'm sure you know someone who loves cars. They love cars so much that they can tell when something is wrong just by being with it. Cars operate around them much better than they do around ordinary people. And there are a lot of horror movies that are built on the premise that cars have a consciousness. Could it be that the writers of those movies know something that we don't? Believe me, it's not just in the movies. That explains why I had such luck with automobiles when I was too poor to maintain them. They still continued to run even when they weren't supposed to, because we always loved each other like cars. You know, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. Now, it seems like a pretty simple statement to me, but I have read the scholarly interpretation of that line by many well-educated people, and I'm always surprised, but none of them took it literally. Some said that he was actually referring to himself. He was saying that it was he, the Son of God, who was within their midst. What? The concept of God being within us was too hard for these erudite people to conceive, because everybody knows that God is out there, not in here. But the truth is, the kingdom of God is infinite intelligence, and infinite intelligence is within us and around us because it is us. The kingdom of God is us because infinite intelligence is us. There is nothing that exists that is not infinite intelligence. And if we began treating infinite intelligence with courtesy and love and awareness, then our lives will reflect that. Love and respect the animals around you, and you will be loved in return. Love and respect the plants around you, and you will be loved in return. Love and respect the people around you, and you will be loved in return, because they are all expressions of infinite intelligence, and infinite intelligence is love. The plants, the animals, the people, the cars, the chairs, the desks, the computers, the televisions, they are all expressions of infinite intelligence. Look upon them with love and thank infinite intelligence for bringing them to you. Touch them not with anger, but caress them with love. They will return your love. You can feel it when you enter some homes. They are warm and loving and cozy, and it's so easy to stay and relax. On the other hand, you can tell in homes where love is not there. They're cold and harsh and unwelcoming, and you cannot wait to get out. Now, we believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. we affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitute true religion. So I say to you, shift your awareness just a little bit, just a little bit. Accept that infinite intelligence is everything, and therefore everything has a consciousness. Just a little shift of awareness. Look upon everything with love. Treat everything with love. Know that everything and everybody are the embodiment of all there is. And like the lion in the story, they will love you back.